1 week later, Tate and Noah's lives changed forever. We were at a straight bar, loud, neon-lit, smelling of fried food, spilled beer, and old Polish. Country played from the speakers while baseball flickered soundlessly above. Glasses clinked, servers darted with heavy trays, and laughter burst from groups celebrating the week's end. It wasn't our usual scene, but the burgers were good and Tate liked the anonymity. In places like this, nobody noticed two men sharing a booth. People were engrossed in their own conversations, drinks, or the game. For someone used to being watched for the wrong reasons, that anonymity felt comforting. Tate sat across from me with one leg tucked beneath him, absently stealing fries from my plate whenever he thought I wasn't looking. Every time I caught him, he'd flash a mischievous grin that made it impossible to stay annoyed. The heaviness that had settled over him since Joey's death hadn't disappeared, but there were moments, small unexpected moments like this, when it loosened its grip. Seeing him laugh even for a few seconds felt like watching sunlight break through weeks of relentless clouds. Neither of us knew that this ordinary dinner would become the dividing line in our lives. Before tonight, there would have been only one version of our story. After tonight, there would be another. At first, I didn't notice anything different. Then I noticed Tate wasn't eating. His fork hovered midair, forgotten. His posture had gone strangely still as something inside him had locked into place. His gaze wasn't wandering the room the way it usually did when he was bored. It had settled, sharp and fixed. 2 tables ahead of us, Tate's eyes were focused on a well-dressed gentleman in his 20s in particular. My eyes followed Tate's. The guy with blonde hair was laughing, leaning back in his chair, one arm slung casually over the backrest, confident without trying, at ease in his surroundings. The kind of presence that pulled attention without asking for it. I followed Tate's line of sight, then looked back at him. "Tate," I said quietly. He didn't answer at first, his jaw tightened then relaxed, he swallowed. "Who are you staring at?" "I know him," he said. Something about his tone made my stomach drop. "From where?" I asked. He blinked as he'd forgotten I was there for a second. "New York," he said, "a long time ago." The word ago carried weight, not nostalgia, something heavier, unfinished. The guy laughed again, louder this time, and Tate flinched almost imperceptibly. That's when the guy turned his head. Their eyes met. The strange man's entire expression on his face changed. A look of disgust appeared, followed by shock. The stranger choked on his beer, causing a guy friend near him to slap his back several times because he was choking. My eyes followed Tate's gaze until I caught sight of the man he was staring at so intently. I knew that face from somewhere. Blonde hair, piercing green eyes, and the kind of smug, affluent smile that came from someone who had never worried about the price tag on anything. He was dressed head to toe in Prada and Gucci. God, he must belong to the same label queen club as Tate. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tate wasn't even gay, yet he dressed and shopped like the biggest label queen I'd ever met, treating designer brands like they were a personality trait. I watched it happen in real time, the recognition, the pause, the slight widening of the eyes. The guy's smile faltered, then sharpened into something unreadable. He leaned toward the person next to him and said something, then he looked back at Tate, and smiled, not friendly, not surprised, intent. "Tate," I said, my voice lower now, "do you want to leave?" "Yes," he said immediately, too fast. His hand slid across the table and wrapped around my wrist, grip firm but grounding. "Don't leave me," he added quietly. The guy stood up, my heart started pounding. Did Tate really like this guy in the same way I hoped he would like me someday? The stranger was very handsome and polished. "Tate," I said again more urgently, "who is that?" Tate didn't look away from the man as he answered. "Someone," he said, voice flat, "I hoped I'd never see again." It was then that I remembered where I'd seen the stranger before. He had been featured in the same charity and society magazines that Talia seemed to appear in every other month. That was Vaughn. His parents were fixtures in the New York City and Los Angeles social scenes, always turning up at charity galas, fundraisers, and political events. If the mayor was hosting something important, the Vaughns were usually there, smiling for the cameras. The realization made my stomach tight. Tate had shot several rounds into a picture of Wayne that he'd taped to the back wall of our Rambler where we lived. I'd never seen the man in person before, only in photographs, but I knew exactly who he was. Wayne wasn't just another rich socialite. He had been one of Tate's childhood friends back before Tate's family had moved to California. Whatever had happened between them, it had left Tate with enough anger to use Wayne's face as target practice. The guy started walking toward our table. He stopped beside Tate, causing Tate to grimace in pain. Hey fuckboy, it's Tate fucking Blue, the guy laughed, hugging Tate awkwardly. I could tell Tate didn't want Wayne to touch his body but endured the contact. I couldn't believe that was you, I thought I was seeing things. Tate's whole body bristled at the contact. Every muscle in his frame went rigid and the warmth drained from his face as though someone had flipped a switch. His jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might crack a tooth. For a split second I saw something I'd rarely seen in him, raw fear mixed with barely restrained fury. Hey Wayne, Tate hissed. The name came out flat, carefully neutral, like he was stepping around broken glass. Wayne's face lit up in recognition. Holy shit, Tate! He stood there by our table staring while the moment lasted a beat too long. I haven't seen you in 5 years, I'm surprised you're still around here. So this was the elusive Wayne. I'd heard the name often enough over the years, usually followed by silence, clenched fists, or a look from Tate that warned me not to ask any questions. I'd seen his face riddled with bullet holes on a paper target taped to the back of our old Rambler, but I'd never seen the real man standing a few feet away. Looking at him now, polished and confident in his designer clothes, it was hard to imagine what had happened between them. Yet one glance at Tate's rigid posture told me their history hadn't been buried, it had only been waiting for the right moment to come back to life. Joey had mentioned Wayne once on the day he announced his cancer. It had been brief, almost careless, the way Joey spoke about it, information about Tate and Wayne, something Tate had done to Wayne when the boys were 4. At the time it hadn't meant much, now it did. Fragments started lining up. The occasional phone calls, Wayne's voice cutting through the room on Tate's birthdays, that one family dinner where his name had come up just long enough for tension to settle in Tate's shoulders. The way Tate had snapped at Noah shut up when he'd asked Talia about him. Wayne had always been there, just out of reach, and now, standing in front of him, there was nothing vague about him anymore. He looked about the same age as Tate, maybe a little older but not by much. He dressed sharply, too sharply for something as simple as this, and carried himself with an effortless confidence that bordered on arrogance. There was something deliberate in the way Wayne stood, the way he looked at people, like he was always measuring them and finding them lacking. Superiority clung to him, not loud, not obvious, but insidious. Noah couldn't stop looking at him. Recognition came slowly, like something dragged up from deep water. Joey had said his name once on the day of the diagnosis. Tate and Wayne, something Tate had done. Noah hadn't understood then, he wasn't supposed to, but now it felt obvious in a way that made his chest tight. Wayne stood too comfortably in the space as he belonged in a way Noah never quite did. Same age as Tate, same kind of presence, not softer, not louder, just equal, maybe more than equal. Noah's stomach turned. Oh, the thought came uninvited, fully formed, and impossible to shake. That's who he is, not a friend, not just family, not someone distant and irrelevant, something closer, something that had history. Noah's mind moved quickly, cruelly, filling in gaps it had no right to fill. The New York phone calls, the tension, the way Tate had shut him down so sharply when he asked about him. You don't react like that to someone who doesn't matter, unless they matter too much. Noah swallowed. Suddenly aware of how small he felt standing there, how out of place. Wayne looked like he fit into parts of Tate's life that Noah had never even been allowed to see. And the worst part, the part Noah didn't want to look at too closely, was how easy it was to imagine it. Noah's jaw tightened. Was he the one Tate had loved before there was nothing left of him to give to Noah, the one who got whatever version of Tate Noah had been chasing this whole time? Wayne didn't look like a memory, he looked like someone who could still matter. No one knew the complete truth about our relationship unless it was Tate. We weren't lovers, we never have been. We shared a strange, fiercely loyal, completely platonic relationship that almost no one could understand. Tate didn't owe me anything beyond the platonic sentiment he'd already given me, and I knew that. Knowing it, however, didn't stop the old feelings from resurfacing. I was 25 years old, yet every now and then 18-year-old Noah would rear his head again. That younger version of me had wanted more than being Tate's buddy or constant companion. He had dreamed that one day Tate would look across a crowded room and search for him first. He wanted to be the person Tate introduced with unmistakable pride, the one person everyone knew stood beside him as his equal, his partner in life. Those dreams had faded years ago, replaced by acceptance and the quiet comfort of the bond we actually shared. Still, seeing Wayne standing there made those old insecurities crawl out of their grave. Whatever history Wayne Vaughn shared with Tate, I already hated the effect he was having. He hadn't spoken more than a few words, yet he had managed to shake the foundation of the life Tate and I had built together. I wasn't afraid Wayne would steal Tate away romantically. I knew better than that. I was afraid he'd awaken ghosts from Tate's past that neither of us had ever truly escaped. Wayne moved first. It was so casual Noah almost didn't register it, just a shift forward, a hand brushing Tate's arm as it belonged there like it always had. And then he kissed him, not quick, not polite, deliberate, lingering just long enough to make it unmistakable, mouth to mouth, close, intimate in a way that didn't ask permission. Noah's breath caught. Tate jerked back immediately like he'd been burned. "What the hell?" Tate snapped, wiping at his mouth, his whole body going rigid with discomfort. Wayne just laughed, not apologetic, not even surprised, amused, like Tate's reaction was expected, like it was part of a game he'd already won. "Relax," Wayne said lightly, a crooked smile still lingering. "You used to like doing that to others." Noah felt something sharp twist in his chest. There it was, proof, real or not, it didn't matter, it felt real, his mind filled in everything Wayne didn't say, the ease, the confidence, the way he hadn't hesitated for even a second. Noah couldn't look away from them, from the space between them, from the history that clearly existed there, messy, complicated, and completely out of Noah's reach. Jealousy came fast and ugly, hot under his skin, tightening his jaw before he could stop it. He didn't belong in this moment, didn't belong in whatever this was between them. Wayne acted like he had a claim, and the worst part, Tate hadn't looked surprised, just angry, like this wasn't new, this had happened before. Noah swallowed hard, his stomach turning. "So it's true," Tate stiffened. "We met in New York," Tate said to me over Wayne's shoulder like he needed to anchor himself to something familiar. "A long time ago." Wayne finally stepped back, hands still resting briefly on Tate's arms, eyes scanning his face like he was confirming something. "Didn't think I'd ever see you again," he said with a half-smile. "You disappeared, moved to California, I hear." Tate's jaw tightened. "Yeah." Wayne glanced at me, then back at Tate. "How's your rich, perfect family?" There it was, the question hung between them, casual on the surface, loaded underneath. Tate didn't hesitate. "Uncle Joey died in June." The words landed hard. Wayne's expression flickered, too fast for anyone who wasn't watching closely to catch it. Relief, unmistakable and sharp, crossed his face before he masked it with something no more appropriate. "Oh," Wayne said. "I'm sorry." Wayne was smirking. I felt it then, a chill that had nothing to do with the bar's air conditioning. Tate noticed it too. His shoulders went rigid, his hand tightening slightly where it rested on his thigh. "Yeah," he said quietly, "me too." Wayne shook his head slowly, though there wasn't an ounce of sympathy in his expression. "I can't believe Joseph Blue is dead," he said. "Honestly, I never thought the bastard would die." My stomach turned. Wayne looked directly at Tate, his voice carrying the casual curiosity of someone asking about the weather. "Did you get to see what he looked like after he shot himself? I mean, he didn't look like you anymore, did he? Was it a closed casket? Did you see him after?" He paused for dramatic effect before finishing, "After he met his end." I was horrified. Who asks someone questions like that after their own uncle's funeral? Tate flinched almost imperceptibly. His shoulders stiffened and the muscles in his jaw tightened so hard I thought he might shatter a molar. He didn't answer. He simply stared at Wayne, his eyes growing colder with every passing second. Wayne merely shrugged. "Well, anyway," he said with a dismissive wave of his hand, "who honestly cares? The dead are dead. They can't tell stories, can they?" A heavy silence settled between them. For the first time since I'd met Wayne Vaughn, I understood why Tate had once emptied a gun into a photograph of the man. "How many of his bitches came to the funeral?" Wayne asked with a smirk. "You know, the parade of women he slept with. I heard none of them showed up." He chuckled to himself. "I guess they found the newest playboy in town and shifted their attention to someone who could actually share a bed with them." Tate's expression remained unreadable, though I caught the slight twitch in his jaw. "It's funny," Wayne continued. "I ran into Joseph at an art gallery a few years ago. Strange seeing him with his clothes on for a change." The corner of Wayne's mouth curled into a smug grin, as if he delivered the funniest joke imaginable. Tate flinched again, this time more noticeably. His hands slowly curled into fists at his sides, his knuckles whitening beneath his skin. Every muscle in his body looked wound so tight that I wondered how much more he could take before he snapped. I wished I could be anywhere else. The air between the two men had become suffocating, thick with years of resentment and things left unsaid. I didn't know the full story between Tate and Wayne, but I knew enough to recognize that Wayne wasn't making conversation. He was provoking him, one calculated jab at a time, and he seemed to be enjoying every second of it. Wayne cleared his throat, suddenly upbeat. "Well, guess that's the past staying in the past, huh?" Tate didn't answer. "How's your family, your dad, the remaining uncle or grandfather still alive?" "My father is alive, what do you want, Wayne?" I looked between them, my instincts screaming that I'd just walked into the middle of something old, unfinished, and dangerous in ways I didn't yet understand. Wayne smiled again, wide, easy wrong. "So," he said, eyes flicking to me and back to Tate, "you going to introduce me to your attractive, sweet friend?" Tate's hand found mine under the table, gripping hard. "This is Noah," he said. He stopped himself. Wayne's eyes sharpened. "Important." Tate met his gaze at last. "Yeah," he said, "he is." And whatever relief Wayne had felt a moment ago vanished, replaced by something darker, something calculating. I had the sudden, sickening sense that this wasn't a coincidence, and that Wayne hadn't been happy to see Tate alive, only relieved someone else was gone. Wayne looked at Noah in confusion, then his eyes went to Tate and then back to my face. Something dawned on him because he smiled and nodded, caressing my hand. "So Noah," Wayne said, reaching across the table and taking a casual sip of Tate's drink without asking, "did you ever meet the elusive, charming, charismatic Joseph Blue, you know, Tate's uncle?" I nodded. "Yeah, he's been in and out of my life since I was 4. I guess you could say I was his surrogate nephew." For a second Wayne simply stared at me. Then he burst into laughter. "Joseph Blue," he gasped between laughs, "you were his surrogate nephew." He doubled over, pounding the table with his fist as he laughed even harder. "You're serious," he managed to say. "You're actually serious." Neither Tate nor I said a word. Wayne wiped at the corner of his eye, still chuckling. "He actually liked you," he said incredulously. "The rich billionaire actually liked a penniless gutter rat like you." His green eyes settled on me with open amusement. "Of course he did." He leaned back in his chair, a smug grin spreading across his face. The words hung in the air. I felt my face burn, less because I believed Wayne and more because of the contempt dripping from every syllable. I glanced at Tate. His expression had gone completely blank, the kind of blankness that wasn't calm at all. It was the look he got when he was holding himself together by sheer force of will. Wayne either didn't notice or didn't care. He smiled as if he had accomplished exactly what he'd come to do. "Tate and I met due to our parents who moved in the same social circles in NYC. Our parents were friends," Wayne said, turning his attention to me like this was all perfectly normal, like my chest wasn't tight with unease. "Tate and I basically grew up together, sleeping in the same room for over a year before he moved to California." I hated that a small, irrational part of me felt jealous. Tate had shared a room with Wayne when they were children, had a history with him that existed long before I ever came into his life. I knew that shouldn't matter. Childhood friendships were different. They weren't the same as the bond Tate and I had built over all those years. But seeing Wayne standing there made something uncomfortable twist inside me. The sleeping arrangements that had once felt like something uniquely ours suddenly didn't feel as exclusive as I had always imagined. Tate and I had spent countless nights under the same roof, sharing a space, sharing silence, sharing the kind of trust most people never found. I had always held those moments close because they felt like proof that I was important to him. Now I had to face the fact that someone else had known a version of Tate before me. Wayne had memories I would never have. He knew the boy Tate used to be, the person he was before the anger, before the walls, before everything that shaped the man standing beside me. And that bothered me more than I wanted to admit. My fingers had been intertwined with Tate's, the familiar pressure of his hand against mine a quiet symbol of everything we shared. It was one of those small gestures that meant more than words ever could. To me, it represented our bond, the trust, the loyalty, the years of choosing each other when no one else understood us. Then I remembered Wayne. Wayne had slept in the same room as Tate when they were children. Wayne had known that side of him before I ever existed in his world. The thought shouldn't have bothered me, but it did. Slowly, almost without realizing it, my fingers loosened from Tate's. I pulled my hand away. At first, Tate didn't react, then he reached for me again, his fingers searching for mine out of instinct. This time I pulled back farther. His hand stopped in midair. Tate stared at me, confusion crossing his face. He wasn't used to me rejecting his touch, not after all these years. His eyes narrowed slightly, trying to understand what had changed. "What's wrong?" his expression seemed to ask, even before he said the words. And I hated myself for it because I knew this wasn't about Wayne sleeping in the same room with him as a child. It wasn't about logic. It was about an old insecurity I'd carried for years, the fear that what I had with Tate wasn't as special as I believed. Because if someone else had shared pieces of his life before me, then maybe I wasn't as unique as I wanted to be. Tate kept looking at me, waiting for an explanation. I didn't have one that didn't sound foolish. Tate turned his attention back to Wayne, his expression hardening. "You slept on the floor with a sleeping bag," Tate said. Wayne raised an eyebrow. "Correct." Tate shook his head. "We never shared a mattress, a bed, or slept next to each other the way Noah and I do." The words were directed at Wayne, but Tate's eyes kept flicking back to me. He was trying to make me understand, trying to separate what he and Wayne had as children from what we had built together. "We just had sleepovers," Tate continued. "One day a week, every other weekend. It wasn't." He stopped. The unfinished sentence hung between us. I looked at Tate, and I understood what he was trying to say without him having to finish. It wasn't like this. It wasn't like the nights Tate and I had spent together. It wasn't the same quiet comfort, the same trust, the same unspoken understanding that existed between us. Wayne had been a childhood friend. I was the person who had been beside him through the hardest parts of his life. But before I could respond, Wayne gave a small, amused laugh. "So what?" he said. Both of us looked at him. Wayne leaned back in his chair, studying us with that same smug expression. "Who cares if Tate and Noah share a mattress? That doesn't make it any more special than me sharing the floor with a sleeping bag." The comment landed harder than it should have. Not because it was true. Because Wayne didn't understand. He saw physical things. He saw rooms and beds and childhood sleepovers. He saw pieces of a story without understanding the meaning behind them. Tate's jaw tightened. For the first time that night, I wasn't sure whether he was angry because of Wayne's words or because he could see how much they had gotten under my skin. Tate stayed quiet. "We had sleepovers all the time," Wayne continued, casual, almost nostalgic. "From when we were, 2, 3, 4, pretty much nonstop until my family moved." My stomach twisted. I glanced at Tate. His eyes were fixed on the table now, jaw locked. "I moved away about 2 months before Tate went to California," Wayne added. "Funny timing, huh?" Tate let out a short breath through his nose. "Yeah," he said. "Funny," Wayne laughed softly. "We were playmates back then. Parents thought it was cute, always together. If you saw one of us, the other wasn't far behind." His gaze lingered on Tate too long. "Come dance, Tate," Wayne said. "You can't say no," Wayne chuckled, then pulled Tate onto the dance floor while Noah's jealousy ate at him from the inside out. Their bodies, so close and intimate beneath the neon lights, were raw and exposed. Noah hated Wayne. He had ever since his name had been spat from the mouth of Tate one night as they slept together in Tate's bedroom. Fucking Wayne. Had Tate actually fucked Wayne, or did he want to tonight? Noah had to know if there was something between his love and this blonde, sarcastic stranger who knew Tate longer than Noah. The thumping bass of the restaurant's dance floor pulsed through the air like a living heartbeat, vibrating the glasses on the table where Noah sat alone, his fingers clenched around a half-empty soda. The dim lights swirled in hypnotic patterns, reds and blues bleeding into purples, casting flickering shadows over the crowd of bodies moving in sync. Laughter and chatter mingled with the music, but to Noah it all blurred into a distant hum, drowned out by the roar of jealousy clawing at his insides, sharp and unrelenting, like acid etching away at his ribs. Wayne's voice cut through the noise, smooth and insistent, his hand wrapping around Tate's wrist with a familiarity that made Noah's stomach twist. Wayne, with his easy grin and broad shoulders honed from years of backyard wrestling and late-night escapades, tugged Tate up from their shared booth. Tate hesitated for a split second, glancing back at Noah with that casual, oblivious smile, the one that said just buddies, right, before letting himself be pulled into the fray. Noah forced a nod, his throat too tight to speak, watching as the two disappeared into the writhing mass on the floor. From his vantage point, Noah had a clear view, the table's edge digging into his palms as he leaned forward, eyes locked on them. Wayne wasted no time, pressing close to Tate, their bodies aligning in the crush of dancers. Thigh to thigh, hip to hip, Wayne's legs slotted between Tate's, brushing up against the front of his jeans in a way that screamed possession. Noah's breath hitched, heat flooding his face, not from the stuffy air but from the sight of Wayne grinding against Tate, slow and deliberate, his hands sliding down to grip Tate's waist, pulling him tighter. Tate laughed, head thrown back, his hands resting lightly on Wayne's shoulders, swaying with the rhythm as if it were nothing. But to Noah it was everything. Every roll of Wayne's hips, every press of fabric against fabric felt like a theft, a violation of the bond Noah had nurtured in secret for years. Wayne was Tate's childhood guy friend, the one who'd shared scraped knees and stolen moments, the one who knew Tate first before Lowe's Angels. Noah now envied that intimacy and nostalgia with a burning fury. Their history stretched back further than Noah's own relationship with Tate. Wayne had been there first, whispering secrets and roughhousing in ways that blurred lines Noah could only dream of crossing. And now here he was, all over Tate, grinding with an intensity that bordered on intimate, his thigh rubbing insistently against Tate's crotch, eliciting a subtle shift in Tate's stance, a flush creeping up his neck. Did Tate feel it? The friction, the heat building between them? Noah's mind screamed yes, even as his heart shattered at the oblivious joy on Wayne's face. Jealousy gnawed deeper, a vicious cycle of rage and longing that made Noah's vision tunnel. Tate couldn't know how Noah's feelings had twisted from brotherly affection into something raw and consuming. Every night they'd shared a bed platonically, every brush of skin that sent sparks through Noah's veins, all hidden behind forced smiles and jokes. And Wayne, he knew no such barriers. Wayne's hands roamed freely now, one sliding up Tate's back under the hem of his shirt, fingers splaying across bare skin while the other anchored at his hip, guiding the grind. Tate's body responded instinctively, arching just a fraction, his thigh pressing back against Wayne's dick, the outline visible through the tight denim as the music throbbed louder. Noah's nails dug into his palms, drawing pinpricks of blood, but the pain was distant, overshadowed by the storm inside him. Why Wayne? Why did he get to touch Tate like that, to make him laugh with that low, throaty sound that Noah craved for himself? The dance floor seemed to mock him, bodies parting and closing like waves, but Tate and Wayne remained fused, Wayne's mouth close to Tate's ear, whispering something that made Tate cringe and struggle. Wayne's lips were near Tate's ear, whispering things while Tate moved away from the blonde partner near his shoulder. Noah's imagination ignited then, unbidden and merciless, painting scenes that twisted the knife deeper. In his mind's eye the restaurant faded, replaced by the dim glow of Wayne's old bedroom, posters peeling from the walls, the air thick with the scent of sweat and teenage rebellion. Tate on the bed, shirt discarded, chest heaving as Wayne loomed over him, hands pinning his wrists above his head. Noah images Wayne sleeping with Tate. Scene retracted, read extended version on Wattpad. Noah's imagination went wild, imagining Wayne's hands, hips, and hot breath on his neck. Been wanting to do you again since we were kids. Noah's vision splintered there, jealousy morphing into anguish, his chest heaving as if he were the one being claimed, being denied. Back in the restaurant, reality crashed and the song shifted to something slower, and Wayne spun Tate once, his laughter cutting through Noah's haze. But the grind continued, thigh to cock, bodies too close, Wayne's hand lingering too long on Tate's lower back. Noah's jealousy peaked, a tidal wave threatening to drown him. He wanted to storm the floor, yank Tate away, confess everything, the love that simmered beneath their relationship, the nights he'd lain awake tracing Tate's sleeping form with his eyes and forefinger aching to taste his skin. But Tate didn't know, didn't see the way Noah's world revolved around him, how Wayne's every touch was a dagger to his heart. The history fueled the fire, Wayne and Tate, inseparable since the cradle, sharing secrets Noah could only guess at. Roughhousing that turned too heated, sleepovers where boundaries blurred in the dark. Noah had joined later once Wayne left, but never fully, always the third wheel, watching their easy intimacy as a ghost with a hunger he buried deep. Now, as Wayne's hips rolled again, pressing his evident arousal against Tate's thigh, Noah felt it all boil over. His hands trembled, soda forgotten, eyes burning with unshed tears. What if Tate felt something back for Wayne? What if this dance was the spark that ignited what Noah had always feared? The song ended, but Wayne didn't pull away immediately, his arms slung around Tate's shoulders as they made their way back, face flushed, grin wide. Tate slid into the booth first, oblivious as Noah was crushed. Noah forced a smile, the jealousy coiling tighter, a serpent ready to strike. Inside, the imagined betrayal replayed, Tate's moans for Wayne, his body arching under another man's thrusts, marking him as claimed. No, it hadn't happened, wouldn't happen, but the thought alone was torture, etching lines of doubt into Noah's soul. He nodded, voice steady despite the chaos. Once Tate was seated in the booth, his cold fingers found mine. His hand intertwined with mine beneath the table, and when he noticed I wasn't pulling away, a small smile crossed his face. It was the kind of smile that didn't belong to the confident man everyone else saw, the smile of someone relieved to know he was wanted. He sat down across from Tate and me, sliding into the booth with a curious expression as he caught the quiet exchange between us. Tate looked up, still holding onto my hand, and for a moment neither of us said anything. The noise of the bar seemed to fade into the background. I could feel Tate's thumb brushing lightly against mine, almost absent-mindedly, like he needed the reminder that I was still there. After everything he had lost and everything he was still trying to understand, those small moments mattered more than either of us wanted to admit. The man across from us smiled knowingly, but he didn't comment. He just picked up the menu and gave us the privacy to exist in that moment without having to explain what we were to each other. I felt Tate's fingers curl tighter around mine under the table, like he was grounding himself through me. "You haven't mentioned Wayne in years, Tate," I said carefully. Tate didn't look up, didn't want to think about it, he replied. The words were clipped, rehearsed. Wayne raised an eyebrow. "Really? That surprises me." He tilted his head, studying Tate with something like curiosity mixed with ownership. "You used to talk a lot about me." Tate's shoulders stiffened. "People change." "Sure," Wayne said easily, "some more than others." There was a beat of silence. The noise of the bar rushed back in around us, laughter, glasses clinking, a burst of music from the jukebox, but our table felt sealed off, tense. I felt Tate's fingers curl tighter around mine under the table, like he was grounding himself through me. Wayne smiled again, that same unreadable smile. "So," he said lightly, nodding at me, "you two been close long?" Tate answered before I could, "Long enough." Wayne's eyes flicked between us, sharp and assessing. "How close, huh?" he said. "Didn't peg you as the sentimental type, Tate." Tate finally looked up then. His expression was cool, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something coiled. "Who says it has anything to do with sentiment?" Tate said, smirking. Tate's lip twitched and Noah felt his breath catch. Was Tate actually saying that what existed between him and Noah wasn't sentimental? Wasn't it about feelings or attachment? Tate looked like the cat that had caught the canary, completely satisfied with himself. "Not every relationship has anything to do with sentiment," Tate continued. He set down his glass, leaning back as if the statement didn't carry any weight. But Noah couldn't ignore what he had just heard. After everything between them, was Tate really reducing it to something that wasn't meaningful? Wayne shook his head, watching Tate carefully. "I don't believe it." Tate glanced over at him. "You don't?" "No," Wayne said firmly. "You don't keep people around just because they amuse you." The words landed harder than Tate expected. For once, he didn't have an immediate comeback. He simply stared at Wayne, the confident expression on his face slipping for just a moment. Because Wayne understood something Tate didn't want to admit. People didn't stay in each other's lives for years without there being something real between them. "Wait a minute," Wayne said, holding up a hand. "If it's not due to sentiment, then what is it about?" Tate shook his head, his expression immediately hardening. "It's none of your business, Wayne." He picked up his glass again, taking a drink before adding, "Why don't you go back to wherever you came from? I'm sure your asshole friends are looking for you." Wayne didn't look offended. If anything, he smiled, amused by the way Tate had instantly gone on the defensive. He leaned back in the booth, studying him with the kind of patience that made Tate even more irritated. "Interesting," Wayne said. Tate narrowed his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" Wayne's smile grew slightly. "If I had a shred of guesswork to do, I'd say I have a pretty good idea why Noah's in your life." Noah felt the tension shift immediately. Tate's expression changed. The joking arrogance disappeared, replaced by a warning. "Shut your mouth," Tate said quietly. Wayne only smiled wider. "Oh, you'd love that," he replied. The words hung between them. Tate stared at him, jaw tight, while Noah sat beside him, feeling the weight of everything that wasn't being said. Wayne had touched a nerve and everyone at the table knew it. "Does Noah know why he's in your bed?" Wayne asked, a smirk spreading across his face. Noah looked up immediately, confused. His eyes moved between Wayne and Tate, trying to figure out what he had missed. Wayne chuckled. "I bet he thinks it has to do with sentiment. That's cute, it's funny." Tate's expression changed, the amusement disappearing as he gave Wayne a warning look. "Wayne." But Wayne wasn't finished. "Or maybe he doesn't know what you left out." He took another mouthful of his drink, slowly setting the glass back down on the table. "It's because of that, isn't it?" Noah's brow furrowed. "Because of what?" Wayne ignored him, looking straight at Tate. "I bet the whole town wears itself out trying to figure out why you and Noah sleep together, act like a married couple, and have for years. I bet people would pay a lot of money to find out whether you two actually did the deed or if you've both been lying about it for 20 years. Noah went still. The words landed strangely, not because of the accusation itself but because Wayne was saying them like there was some obvious truth everyone else knew except him. Wayne laughed quietly. "The funny thing is, they're not even close, are they?" He turned his smile toward Noah. Noah stared back, completely lost. He had no idea what Wayne was talking about, and the realization seemed to entertain Wayne even more. He really doesn't know. Tate's voice was sharp. "Wayne, be quiet." Wayne leaned back, pleased with himself. "He doesn't know, does he?" "Enough," Tate warned. Wayne only smiled. "You know what's even funnier? That people don't know it's actually hilarious." Noah's confusion grew. He looked at Tate, waiting for some explanation, but Tate refused to meet his eyes. Wayne continued, "Noah actually thinks it's his personality and that wonderful body of his that keeps your attention." Noah blinked, caught completely off guard. "What?" Wayne laughed while Tate's expression turned colder. And Noah sat there wondering why, for the first time in years, he felt like there was a conversation happening about him that he wasn't part of. "I haven't seen you in many years, Wayne. You didn't know me very well even then." The words landed harder than they sounded. "Oh, I beg to differ," Wayne smirked. "I bet I know you better than your bitch of a mother knows you." Tate's smile faltered for just a second. And in that moment I understood something important. Whatever history they shared wasn't warm nostalgia. It was unfinished, heavy, and Tate had spent his entire life outgrowing it. I squeezed Tate's hand under the table, silent but firm. He squeezed back and Wayne noticed. Wayne's attention drifted back to me instead of Tate, his expression softening into something openly charming. "I know you so well, Tate, remember, so," he said, smiling like we were sharing a private joke. "This must be Noah." Wayne turned in the blonde's direction. "That's me," I replied cautiously. He leaned a little closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, clean, sharp. "You've got good taste," he added, "in movies, in places, in the company, in lovers." Wayne's hand stroked my left palm. He was trying to seduce me in front of Tate to get a rise out of his old friend. Before I could respond, his hand came up again, light this time, and settled on my shoulder, thumb brushing absently like he was testing how far he could go. Tate stiffened beside me. Wayne didn't miss it. If anything, it encouraged him. "Have you fucked him?" Wayne asked Tate while gazing at my ass. "You're very attractive, Blondie," Wayne said to me, eyes flicking deliberately to Tate and back. "I can see why he keeps you close, Noah. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I bet once all your clothes come off, you're even more tight and beautiful." I saw Tate's jaw twitch. He hated it when people talked about me like I was a piece of meat or a simple notch on a belt. Wayne's touch lingered a second longer than necessary. That was all it took. Tate's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he shifted, his hand reaching out to knock Wayne's arms off me harder this time. "Don't," Tate said, voice tight, jaw clenched. "Don't flirt with him, don't touch him, you perv." Wayne raised his eyebrows, amused. "Relax, I was just being friendly." "No," Tate shot back, "you were provoking me." Tate turned slightly toward me, his knee pressing against mine under the table, his presence unmistakably territorial now. His hand slid to my thigh, grounding, claiming, protective in a way that sent a pulse of heat and fear through me at the same time. Wayne's smile widened, slow and knowing. Wow, he said softly, you really do care. Tate's eyes were dark, jealous in a way he didn't bother hiding. Does he know about everything between us? No, he's not entertainment, Tate yelled, and he's not yours to test or bother. Wayne leaned back, hands up again, but his gaze stayed fixed on me. Lucky blonde bastard, he said, didn't know Noah was so dear to you. Tate didn't look at Wayne when he answered. Noah's not interested in you, Tate said, or anyone else. The air between the three of us felt charged, brittle, as one wrong word would shatter it. And I realized then Wayne wasn't flirting because he wanted me, he was flirting because he wanted to get a rise out of Tate, and judging by Tate's reaction he'd found the nerve. Wayne smirked, clearly satisfied with himself, and leaned back just enough to look relaxed. Tate, he said casually like he was bringing up an old inside joke, have you told Noah about your first relationship? Does the blonde know of your first lover? The word relationship landed wrong. Tate's entire demeanor shifted. It was immediate, like someone had flipped a switch. The tension drained out of his body all at once, replaced by something colder, sharper. His hand slipped off mine, his shoulders went rigid, his face closed down so completely it was almost frightening. Don't, Tate said, his voice wasn't loud, it was hollow. Wayne tilted his head, feigning innocence. What, it's history, we were kids. Tate finally looked at him then, and the look he gave Wayne made my stomach drop. There was so much anger and shame, something old and exhausted and deeply buried being dragged to the surface. That's not your story to tell, Tate said angrily. I glanced between them. Tate, I said gently, what is he talking about? He's full of shit, Tate said sharply. He doesn't know anything, he's making up rumors and lies to put distance between us. Noah looked at Tate, watching the anger flash across his face. It wasn't the usual irritation Tate showed when someone annoyed him. This was different, more personal. Wayne only smirked. You know, Tate, I may have an imagination, he said calmly, but sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Tate rolled his eyes, but Noah noticed he didn't have a quick comeback. Wayne picked up his glass of whiskey and took another sip before setting it down. There's not enough vodka or whiskey in the world that would help me imagine your truth. Noah let out a nervous laugh, unsure whether Wayne was joking or trying to provoke Tate. The whole exchange felt like watching two people argue over a secret Noah wasn't supposed to hear. Wayne turned his attention toward Noah, studying him for a moment. You're not the first, Wayne said, his voice quieter now, and you're not going to be the last person who has shared Tate's bed. Noah's expression changed, the humor disappeared. He looked at Tate, waiting for him to shut it down, to laugh it off, to tell Wayne he was lying. But Tate just stared at Wayne, his jaw clenched. And that silence spoke louder than anything either of them had said. Wayne laughed again, low and pleased with himself, clearly feeding off the tension he'd built. He turned to me once more. So Noah, he said, tilting his head, you and Tate ever have sleepovers too? Then he looked back at Tate and winked. The air went dead. Tate stood up so fast his chair slammed into the floor behind him. Don't, Tate warned, his voice was quiet now, flat, dangerous. Wayne raised his hands a little, mock surrender. Relax, I'm just saying some patterns repeat, you were always. Tate stepped closer. One more word, Tate hissed, and I'll put my hands on you. Wayne smirked, clearly convinced he still had control. What this? He asked, opening his mouth again. Wayne's fingers caressed Noah's hip. Tate leaned down. Close enough that I barely made out what he said to Wayne. Say one more word about my private life in front of Noah, Tate repeated, his voice shaking with uncontained fury, and I'll fucking kill you. For a split second it looked like Wayne might actually listen. Instead he reached out. His fingers brushed my shoulder, slow, deliberate, possessive, like he was testing a boundary on purpose, like he wanted Tate to see it. His fingers lowered to my thigh as Wayne fondled it, stroking it upwards. I froze. Tate didn't. Don't touch him, Tate said, every word shaking with restraint. Wayne glanced at Tate, eyes glittering, and let his thumb linger, caressing my shoulder once more before pulling his hand back. Sensitive, huh? He murmured. Guess some things never change. Tell me, Tate, do you have your usual birthday plans this year? Any different plans than usual? That was it. Tate moved before anyone could react. He closed the distance in one step, diving on top of Wayne, almost capsizing the table, knocking the guy off his feet, while Tate drove his fist into Wayne's face. The crack of impact cut through the bar. Wayne went down hard, chair skidding, glass shattering somewhere nearby as people shouted and scrambled back. Tate stood over him, chest heaving, fists clenched, eyes bright with fury and something dangerously close to tears, not wild, not unhinged, just pushed past the last line. "I warned you," Tate said, voice breaking. "You don't get to touch him, you don't get to humiliate me, and you don't get to drag my private life through the mud for your sadistic pleasure in front of Noah." Wayne lay on the floor, stunned, blood at the corner of his mouth, staring up as the realization had finally landed. Tate turned away immediately and reached for me, gripping my hand like it was the only thing anchoring him. "You come near either of us again," Tate continued, low and lethal, "contact Noah in any way or tell my private business to anyone, and I'll tell your bitch of a mother and the police exactly what you did and didn't do. Every detail. I won't hesitate. You're a leech, Wayne, and an awful friend." Wayne went still. The words Tate spoke contradicted the account Joey told me about Wayne, where Tate hurt Wayne. The color drained from Wayne's face faster than the blood. Tate straightened, chest heaving, then turned immediately to me. His anger didn't touch me, not even a spark of it. His expression softened the second our eyes met, like the rage had burned itself out just to keep me safe. "What kind of friend were you, Wayne?" he said, bitter, hollow. "You weren't just cruel, you were an awful, silent, enabling weasel. I'll never forgive you for being an awful friend by standing there, doing nothing and seeing an opportunity to hurt me," Tate said, his voice low and shaking, not loud but razor-thin with control. Wayne laughed under his breath, straightening like he hadn't just been knocked to the floor. He looked almost impressed, cocky in a way no one ever dared to be with Tate. "Oh, I know exactly what you are, Tate," Wayne said, eyes flicking between us. "I always did. I know what you are and what you've done." Tate didn't move. "You're a disgrace," Wayne went on, needling, enjoying it. "All that money, all that reputation and class, and they got you, a dirty, perverted excuse for a man." Wayne looked at me. "Noah, get away from him, he'll only hurt and destroy you." My stomach dropped. I didn't understand what game Wayne was playing or why he sounded so certain he was winning. "Once you get his ick on you, you'll never get it off," Wayne said, his voice losing some of its teasing edge. "But that doesn't mean he'll treat you right." Noah felt his stomach tighten. Wayne looked directly at him. "He doesn't want you the way you think he does. You're just a substitute, someone filling a space that was already there." The words cut deeper than Noah expected. He hated that a part of him wondered if there was any truth behind them. Tate immediately stiffened. "Enough." But Wayne kept going. "The closer you get to this monster, the worse you're going to hurt." Noah looked at Tate, expecting to see anger, denial, something. Instead, he saw something more complicated, a flash of pain before Tate quickly buried it beneath the cold expression he showed the rest of the world. Tate grasped Noah's fingers, his hand closing around them as if he needed the connection more than he wanted to admit. He gave a small tug, urging his blonde companion to follow him out of the restaurant and away from Wayne's cruel words. "Please, Noah," Tate said quietly, "let's go." There was no arrogance in his voice now, no sarcasm, no sharp remark meant to push people away. "Just a quiet request." Noah looked at him for a moment, seeing the tension in his face and the way Tate's usual confidence had slipped. Wayne's words still lingered in the air, but so did the feeling of Tate's hand wrapped around his. Without saying anything, Noah stood. Tate didn't let go as they walked toward the door, keeping hold of him like he was afraid that if he released him, Noah might stay behind and believe everything Wayne had said. Behind them, the noise of the restaurant continued, but Noah barely heard it. All he could feel was Tate's hand in his. I didn't hesitate. I laced my fingers through his and led him out into the night, his grip tight, shaking, real. Behind us, Wayne stayed on the floor, silent at last. And for the first time, Tate hadn't swallowed the rage or the fear. He'd protected his line, and he'd protected me. Wayne turned his gaze back to Tate and smiled evilly. "What I did to you and the things you did to yourself are why you deserved it," Wayne added softly, the words sharpened just enough to cut. He stepped back, brushed imaginary dust off his jacket, and smirked. "Every bit, and now you have to live with it while I gain from your mistakes," Wayne laughed. You can act like you're the perfect little rich boy with all the money, success, girls, and even that dumb cunt in your bed. Wayne looked at me. But I know what you are, what you've done, whom you've done it with, how long it went on, and I know what you are. I hope it tortures you to madness to know that I could take everything away from you if you stopped being a gain for me. Wayne Vaughn owns Tate Blue, and there's nothing you can do to change that. Wayne turned and walked away like he'd said nothing worth answering for, like he hadn't just cracked something open and left it bleeding in the open air. I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding. None of it made sense, the venom, the history, the way Tate looked like he was holding himself together by sheer force of will. I looked at Tate, confused and shaken, knowing I'd just witnessed the edge of something much deeper than a bar fight, and that whatever Wayne had tried to drag into the light, Tate had been carrying it alone for a very long time. We walked out of the restaurant into air that felt too cold for what had just happened, like the world had already moved on and we were the only ones still stuck in it. The door shut behind us, but Wayne's voice didn't stay inside. It clung. Tate didn't look back. I unlocked Tate's Volvo and pulled the passenger door open. "I'll drive," I said, keeping it even like this was routine. He didn't argue, that alone felt wrong. Tate got in slowly, like each movement had to be forced through something heavy. No tension, no visible anger, just that same unnatural stillness, like everything inside him had been locked down tight. I got in, buckled Tate's seatbelt for him, started the engine and pulled onto the interstate. The road opened up ahead of us, long and empty, the hum of the tires filling the silence Tate left behind. He didn't move, didn't speak, and all I could think about over and over, replaying like something I couldn't shut off, was Wayne. The way Wayne talked to Tate, how Wayne looked at him, the way Tate reacted. My grip tightened slightly on the wheel because it didn't feel like a normal fight. It didn't feel like two people who just hated each other. It felt like something else, something older, something uneven, something dangerous. I glanced at Tate, catching the way his jaw was locked, the way his hand twitched once against his leg like he was holding something back so tightly it hurt. And the thought came, sharp and unwelcome, how does Wayne have that kind of hold on you? Not influence, not history, ownership. It made my stomach turn just thinking about it. Wayne had acted like he could say anything, do anything, like humiliating Tate, like touching me right in front of him because he knew it would land, like he knew exactly where to press and how hard. And worse, Tate let it land, not in the moment, not outwardly. Tate fought back, punched him and stopped it, but underneath that, it was like Wayne had already been inside his head long before tonight. Why, how, what did Wayne have on him? What did Wayne know about Tate that allowed Wayne to do or say anything to Tate without consequence? I swallowed, forcing my focus back to the road, but the question wouldn't let go. "Tate," I said quietly. No response. "He doesn't get to do that to you." That got something, barely, a small shift, like Tate registered the words but didn't fully come back. I hesitated, then pushed, softer this time. "Whatever he thinks he has on you, Tate, he doesn't own you." The second the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure if I'd said the right thing. Tate's fingers curled slightly, a delayed reaction as something deep inside him had flinched. For a moment I thought he wouldn't respond at all, then, low and distant. "You don't understand, Noe," Tate said quietly. The nickname, usually spoken with teasing affection, sounded different now. There was exhaustion behind it, defeat. Noah glanced over at him but didn't push. "Just drive us home," Tate said. "I don't want to talk about it anymore." Noah nodded. He understood that tone. Tate wasn't shutting him out because he didn't care. He was shutting down because something had hit too close to home. So Noah turned his attention back to the road and continued driving. The passing streetlights reflected across the windshield, filling the silence between them. Neither of them spoke. For once, Noah didn't try to force an answer out of Tate or demand an explanation. He simply drove. Beside him, Tate stared out the window, his expression unreadable. But his hand remained close to Noah's, their fingers still occasionally brushing against each other as if neither of them was willing to completely let go. The drive home was silent, the kind that pressed against my ears until it felt loud. I reached over and took Tate's hand, lacing my fingers through his, hoping the contact might anchor him. His hand was cold, unresponsive, but he didn't pull away. He stared out the window, eyes unfocused, streetlights sliding across his face without touching him. Whatever Wayne had stirred up had pulled him somewhere far away, thousands of miles and years removed, and no matter how tightly I held on, I couldn't follow him there. I squeezed his hand anyway, a quiet promise. I didn't know how to bring him back yet, I only knew I wasn't letting go. Tate's shoulders began to shake. At first I thought it was the road, a bump in the asphalt, or the uneven pavement beneath the tires. I almost ignored it, but then I heard it. Barely there. A sound so quiet it was like he was trying to force it back down before it could escape. I turned toward him and my chest tightened. He was crying. Not dramatically, not the way people imagined Tate would break down. There were no angry words, no shouting, no attempt to make anyone else responsible for what he was feeling. Just tears. They slipped down his face silently as he stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. Even now, even alone with me, he looked like he was fighting it, fighting the tears, fighting the hurt, fighting the part of himself that wanted to be seen. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. This was Tate, the man who could walk into any room and make people notice him, the man who could cut someone down with a single sentence and never let anyone see him vulnerable. And now he was sitting beside me, falling apart in the passenger seat. I'd never seen Tate cry like this since the time he sucked his thumb under his bed years ago. Tate always locked it all behind that stone wall and dared the world to try to break it. Seeing it crack now terrified me. "Tate," I said softly, my voice barely holding together. I tightened my grip on his hand, thumb brushing over his knuckles like I could smooth the hurt out of him. He didn't look at me. His breathing hitched, uneven and raw, and suddenly the tears were coming faster, his shoulders trembling harder like he'd been holding this in for years and his body didn't know how to stop. My throat burned. I wanted to pull the car over to hold him, to take whatever Wayne had carved into him and carry it myself if I could. I didn't ask him to explain. I didn't tell him to be okay, I just stayed. Tate kept crying. I pulled the car farther onto the shoulder and put it into park, the hum of passing traffic rushing by us like the rest of the world refusing to slow down. I pushed his seat back carefully, gently, afraid even the smallest movement might shatter him. He didn't resist. He didn't react at all. I pushed our seats backwards in my car, then I climbed on Tate's lap, offering my body as comfort, the only thing I had that felt solid enough to anchor him. I folded myself around him, pressing my chest to his, my arms around his shoulders and head. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I just wanted him to feel warmth, weight, proof that someone was there holding him together when he couldn't do it himself. I used myself like a human blanket, shielding him from the world, from Wayne's words, from whatever memories had been ripped open. His face pressed into my shoulder, his breath hot and uneven against my neck. His hands fisted into my shirt like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. "It's okay," I whispered, over and over, not because I knew it was true, but because he needed to hear it from someone. "I've got you, I'm right here, you're safe." His sobs were raw now, ugly and unrestrained, the kind that come from a place so deep it feels endless. I rocked us gently as cars blurred past, my cheek against his hair, my heart breaking with every shaky breath he took. I didn't care who saw us, I didn't care how long it took. If this was what it meant to hold him together, then I would stay right there on the side of the road with him for as long as he needed. Tate was never emotional around me. I'd seen his anger, his jealousy, his sharp flashes of hate, but never this. Never tears, never pain laid bare like this, trembling and unguarded in my arms. His voice finally broke through the sobs, small and wrecked, nothing like the controlled tone he wore like armor. "I wish I had grown up here my whole life," he said quietly. "Things would be so different." The words hit harder than any scream. I tightened my hold on him, my forehead resting against his, feeling the truth of it vibrating through his chest. This wasn't nostalgia, it was grief. Grief for a version of himself that never got to exist, for a childhood that shaped him into something sharp and hollow instead of safe. Tate cried like a wounded, hurt animal who hid in the fetal position, begging not to receive another kick from a stranger. "I wish I had met you before moving here," he said, his head resting against my cheek, wiping his tears into my skin like he didn't even notice he was doing it. "You can talk to me," I said gently. "You don't have to carry this by yourself." "No," he whispered, "I can't. I want Wayne dead." The word landed heavier than anything Wayne had said. I turned my head slightly so Tate couldn't see my face, couldn't see the way his answer cracked something open in me. It hurt not because he didn't trust me, but because he truly believed he had to suffer alone. Like pain was something he was meant to endure in silence, something he wasn't allowed to hand over, even to the person holding him together on the side of the road. Tate extended his hand, his fingers gently caressing Noah's cheek. "I can't tell you, Noah," he whispered. Noah's eyes searched his face, trying to understand what Tate was holding back. And it doesn't have anything to do with you not being enough, Tate continued. You need to know that. His thumb brushed softly along Noah's skin, his expression filled with a sadness Noah rarely saw from him. Two people knowing already is too many. Noah felt his chest tighten at the words. Tate. Just live your life, Tate said quietly, be happy. The request sounded impossible. How was Noah supposed to simply move forward when Tate looked like he was breaking apart right in front of him? Tate lowered his hand but kept his eyes on Noah. The kindest thing I can do, he said softly, is just to carry it alone. For once, Tate wasn't trying to protect his pride. He wasn't trying to win an argument or keep control of the situation. He was trying to protect Noah, even if it meant hurting himself. Tate swallowed hard, looking away for a moment as if he was trying to find the right words. Nothing good ever comes from ruining people's lives, he said quietly. Noah felt his heart tighten. There was so much weight behind the sentence. Tate wasn't just talking about Wayne or rumors or what had happened at the restaurant. He was talking about choices, consequences, and the damage that came when people got pulled into something they weren't prepared to carry. Tate looked back at him. I don't want that for you, Noah. His voice was barely above a whisper. I don't want my problems to become your problems. I don't want you waking up one day and realizing you lost parts of your life because of me. Noah stared at him, feeling the distance Tate was trying to create even as he sat inches away. You think pushing me away is protecting me? Noah asked softly. Tate didn't answer right away. Because the truth was written all over his face. He did. And that was what hurt the most. I swallowed hard, breathing through the ache in my chest and tightened my arms around him anyway. If he couldn't talk, then I would stay. If he couldn't share the weight, then I would help him carry it without asking. Even if all I could give him was my presence, my body wrapped around his, and the quiet promise that I wasn't going anywhere, no matter how much he tried to protect me from his pain. He said it flatly, like a sentence he'd practiced until it stopped shaking. Noah was almost home when Tate suddenly tapped him on the shoulder. The touch startled him. Tate. Before Noah could ask what was wrong, Tate's face tightened and he pointed toward the side of the road. Noah immediately pulled over. The moment the car stopped, Tate opened the door and hurried out. He made it only a few feet from the road before bending over, one hand braced against his knee as he vomited. Noah was out of the car almost instantly. Tate. He moved beside him, his hand hovering near Tate's back, unsure whether to touch him or give him space. Tate had always hated appearing weak, hated anyone seeing him lose control, and Noah knew this was probably humiliating for him. But this wasn't about pride. This was Tate hurting. When it finally passed, Tate stayed there for a moment, breathing heavily, one hand pressed against his stomach. Noah stepped closer. Are you okay? Tate let out a shaky breath and wiped his mouth, refusing to look at him. Yeah, he muttered. Noah gave him a look that said he didn't believe him. Tate closed his eyes. I'm fine, Noe. But his voice didn't sound convincing. Noah stood beside him in the quiet of the roadside, knowing this wasn't just sickness. It was everything Tate had been holding inside, finally finding a way out. Tate returned to the car 5 minutes later. He moved more slowly than usual, like all the energy had been drained out of him. When he climbed back into the passenger seat, I could see how pale he was. For once, there was no sharp remark, no attempt to pretend everything was fine. He looked terrified of his own shadow. I reached over and pulled the seatbelt across him, clicking it into place. He didn't protest, he just sat there quietly, staring ahead. The silence between us felt heavy. After a moment, Tate turned toward me. His eyes looked tired, almost lost, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Noah. He stopped, swallowing as if whatever he wanted to say was harder than he expected. I looked at him. What? Tate looked down at his hands, his fingers twisting together. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted quietly. The confession surprised me more than anything else he had said that night. Because Tate always had an answer. He always had a way to fight, a way to win, a way to make the world bend around him. But sitting there in the passenger seat, he didn't look like someone trying to win. He looked like someone who was scared. "You know that I love you, right?" Tate said quietly from the passenger seat of his Volvo. The words caught Noah off guard. "Yeah," Noah said, nodding. He did know, at least he thought he did. He had spent years learning Tate's version of love, the way Tate showed up, the way he held on, the way he trusted Noah with parts of himself he never showed anyone else. But hearing the words spoken aloud still felt different. "In order for people to be happy," Tate continued, staring through the windshield, "they have to be honest, transparent, they have to have a foundation that's stable." Noah listened carefully. He could hear the direction Tate was moving in, even if Tate hadn't said it yet. There was a heaviness in his voice that made Noah's chest tighten. "And if you don't have that," Tate continued, "everything eventually falls apart." Noah looked over at him. He wondered where Tate was going with this. Because this didn't sound like a casual conversation. This sounded like Tate was trying to prepare him for something difficult. "Tate." Tate didn't look at him. "I need you to understand something, Noe." The use of the nickname made Noah's heart ache. "What?" Tate took a slow breath. And for once, he seemed less afraid of the truth itself than he was of what the truth might cost them. Tate sniffled, quickly wiping at his face as he stared out the windshield. "If a relationship is built on lies or control, truth, betrayal, cheating, jealousy, replacement," he paused, struggling to get the words out, "nobody can be happy." Noah stayed quiet, letting him speak. Tate's voice grew softer. "We can't make happiness out of other people's misery and sadness." He finally turned toward Noah, his eyes tired and full of a pain he had been carrying for far too long. "Can we, Noe?" The question wasn't really asking for an answer. It was asking for permission. Permission for Noah to agree that some things couldn't be justified. Permission for Tate to believe that protecting someone sometimes meant hurting yourself. Permission to admit that love wasn't always enough if it came at someone else's expense. Noah looked at him, his heart aching at the fear behind Tate's words. "No," Noah said quietly, "we can't." Tate nodded slowly, like he had expected that answer. But Noah reached over and took his hand. "That doesn't mean you have to carry everything alone." Tate's fingers tightened around his. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The car remained parked on the side of the road, the world moving around them while they sat in the quiet, facing the truth neither of them wanted to ignore. "As I said before," Tate said quietly. His voice was softer now, stripped of the confidence and sharpness he usually used as armor. Noah looked over at him, waiting. Tate stared down at their hands, his thumb moving slowly across Noah's fingers. "I'm not capable of love, Noah. Whatever we share isn't love. I love the wrong people. I only love myself. This thing between us is unnatural and we've never been anything good." The words hit harder than a punch, worse than Wayne, worse than the silence in the car. I pulled back just enough to look at him. His eyes were red, hollowed out as he'd already decided this was the truth and was daring me to argue. "That's not true," I said, my voice rough. "You don't get to rewrite what I've lived." He scoffed weakly, turning his face away. "You're mistaking attachment for love, dependency. I cling, I fixate, I don't," he broke off, jaw tightening. "I don't love. I had a great teacher." I swallowed, my chest burning. "You moved across the country for me, you sleep because I'm next to you, you notice how I take my coffee, which house I like and which movies make me nervous, you protect me like it's instinct." I pulled back just enough to see his face. "That's not true," I said immediately, but he shook his head, desperate to be believed. "It is," he insisted, voice breaking. "Look at me, I ruin things, I ruin people. Anyone who gets close ends up bleeding for it, emotionally or otherwise. I'm bad for you, Noah. I destroy everything I touch and everyone who touches me." Something in me hardened, not against him, but against the lie he'd been living with for so long. "You didn't destroy me," I said quietly. He let out a bitter laugh. "Not yet." I cupped his face, forcing him to look at me. His skin was warm, real here. "You didn't destroy me," I repeated. "Tate, you saved me in ways you don't even realize. You showed up, you stayed, you cared when you didn't have to." "That's just obsession," he said weakly. "No," I said, "that's effort. Obsession doesn't worry about hurting someone, you do." His breath stuttered. I could feel the fight draining out of him, replaced by fear, raw, exposed fear. "You're not poison," I went on. You're wounded, and yeah, sometimes wounded people lash out or shut down or scare the hell out of the people who love them. That doesn't make you unlovable, it makes you human. He pressed his forehead into my shoulder like he couldn't hold himself up anymore. I don't know how to be normal, he whispered. I'm not asking you to be, I said, wrapping my arms around him fully now. I'm asking you to stop deciding you're unworthy before anyone else gets a say. He stayed quiet, trembling, but he didn't pull away, and for the first time since the bar, since Wayne. Since all the things Tate refused to name, I felt him let himself be held not like a weapon, not like a shield, but like someone who desperately needed not to be alone. Tate's voice went flat again, warning wrapped in resignation. Don't go looking for answers in me, Noah, he said. You won't find anything worth keeping. I will let you down, and when I do, I won't even feel it the way you think I should. He swallowed, eyes fixed somewhere past the windshield. Loving me, being close to me, it only ends one way, you get hurt. I didn't interrupt. I could hear how practiced the words were. People like me don't get happy endings, he went on, quieter now, crueler in its certainty. We ruin other people's happiness just by standing too close to it. Everything good I touch curdles eventually. I've seen it happen over and over. He finally looked at me then, eyes stripped bare of defiance, almost pleading with me to believe him. I'm not saying this to be dramatic, he said. I'm saying it so you don't waste yourself trying to save something that was never meant to last. Tate let out a hollow laugh that didn't sound like laughter at all. That bastard was right, he said finally, voice rough. Wayne, he was right about me. He shook his head, disgust curling in on itself. I'm disgusting, a vile reminder of unfixable destruction, a stain on my family's name, everything they poured money and pride into, and this is what they got. I reached for him without thinking. He flinched hard, pulling away. Don't, he said sharply, then quieter, more dangerous. Don't touch me, Noah. If you get too close, you'll get hurt in ways you won't recover from. I'm not worth the damage. He stared at his hands as if they belonged to someone else, jaw clenched, shame radiating off him in waves. I don't want to be the thing that breaks you, he said, so don't make me the thing you try to hold on to. Tate broke then, really broke. Not the quiet, restrained kind of crying he could choke down or hide behind sarcasm, but raw, body-racking sobs that tore out of him as something had finally split open. He folded in on himself, shoulders caving, breath hitching so hard it scared me. The sounds he made were unbearable, grief, shame, fear, all tangled together and spilling out at once. These weren't unhappy tears so much as years of pressure finally giving way, a dam collapsing after holding far too long. Hours passed like that. I stayed where I was, holding him together the only way I knew how, arms wrapped around him, my body pressed to his, my cheek against his hair. I didn't tell him to stop. I didn't tell him it would be okay. I just stayed. Every time his sobs spiked, I tightened my grip, anchoring him when he couldn't anchor himself. Traffic faded, time blurred, the world narrowed down to the sound of his breathing and the weight of his pain against my chest. At some point, his cries softened into quiet, exhausted whimpers, his body still trembling like it didn't trust the calm. He clung to me without realizing it, fingers fisted in my shirt like I was the only solid thing left. I know you feel things strongly, Noah said quietly, but I don't see someone who's broken, ruined, or stained. Tate looked away, his face tense as if he was trying to reject the words before they could reach him. I see someone who is kind, Noah continued. Someone who loves harder than he wants anyone to know, someone who's sweet even when he tries to pretend he isn't. Noah swallowed. I see a very attractive, caring person. I don't care if anyone else sees that, I do. He leaned closer, resting his cheek against Tate's. Regardless of how you feel about yourself, I told you this when you played Russian roulette in the garage. The only place I want to be is next to you. Tate closed his eyes. And if that means I'm standing beside you in our house, then that's where I want to be. If it means sitting next to your graveside someday, I don't want that to be the case, but wherever you are, that's where I'm going to be. Noah's voice softened. I love you. For several seconds, Tate didn't move. Noah's cheek was still pressed against his when Tate finally sniffled. You don't know who you love, Noah. Noah didn't hesitate. Yeah, I do. Tate shook his head slightly, tears gathering again. No, you don't. Yes, I do, Noah said firmly. Maybe I don't know every dark secret you have. Maybe there are things you've been afraid to tell me, but I don't care. Tate looked at him. I love what I see, Noah said. I love the person who's sitting right here with me. I love the man who worries about hurting other people. I love the man who thinks he has to carry everything alone because he cares too much. Tate's lips trembled. And even if you were the worst person on earth, Noah whispered, it wouldn't change how I feel about you. The words broke through the wall Tate had spent years building. He didn't have an argument. He didn't have a sarcastic response. He just sat there letting Noah hold on to him. Noah took a slow breath, still keeping his cheek against Tate's. One last thing, Noah said quietly. Tate looked at him. There's nothing you can do today, nothing you can do to me, that would make me stop loving you. Tate's expression tightened, like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to tell Noah he didn't understand what he was saying. But Noah continued. No mistake you could make, nothing you could tell me, even if you had done something terrible, even if you had committed a felony or ended up being someone the world wanted to condemn. He paused, making sure Tate heard every word. It wouldn't change how I feel about you. Tate looked down, his eyes filling again. It might change things, Noah admitted. It might change the way we live our lives, it might change what happens next, but it doesn't change what I feel. His voice softened. You're a good man, Tate. Tate shook his head slightly, but Noah didn't let him dismiss it. You aren't. Noah squeezed his hand. Whatever happened, whatever you're afraid will happen, it doesn't erase everything else. It doesn't erase the person I know. It doesn't erase the way you've loved me, protected me, and been there for me. Tate sat quietly, overwhelmed by the certainty in Noah's voice. For so long, Tate had believed the worst thing about him was the thing that defined him. But Noah was reminding him that a person was more than their worst moments, their fears, or the secrets they carried. And for the first time that night, Tate didn't pull away. After a while, I slid back into the driver's seat of Tate's car, giving him the space to compose himself. Neither of us spoke. Tate took a few slow breaths before running both hands through his hair. He wiped the remaining tears from his face with the heels of his palms, straightened his shirt, and adjusted the collar until he looked a little more like himself. It was a familiar ritual. Whenever life overwhelmed him, he put himself back together piece by piece, making sure no one could see what had happened underneath. When he was finished, he turned toward me. For a brief moment, his eyes still carried the sadness of everything we'd said. Then he smiled. It wasn't forced. It wasn't the confident grin he wore to charm strangers or the sarcastic smirk he used to keep people at arm's length. It was small, quiet. A smile meant only for me. I smiled back, relieved to see even a little of the man I loved returning to the surface. Now that we're done with dinner, he said in a neutral, normal voice, why don't we watch some movies and have fun? Tate acted like the last 2 hours hadn't happened, that Wayne didn't appear at our table, the fight hadn't escalated, and he hadn't cried while I lay on top of him protecting him from the cold, hard world. I sighed and knew what was happening with Tate. Tate was resetting the room because he couldn't handle the emotional escalation or consequences of his actions. Once I parked the car in the driveway outside our home, Tate unbuckled his seatbelt and walked to the front door. I could hear him turn on the VHS machine in our living room to set up for movie night. Tate left me in the car while I wondered whether or not he was all right or if I should call Andrew. The next morning, during brunch, I went to visit Susie and my mom to talk about what had happened the night before. Susie seemed sad to hear the news about Wayne, and Talia was horrified at Tate's unseemly, violent public behavior. He compartmentalized everything, Noah, she added. Anything that threatened the version of himself he could survive as straight, and queerness, especially in others, seemed to hit something raw in him. She looked at me gently. I'm telling you this not to excuse it, just so you understand how fractured his inner world already was before you came along. I sat back, trying to reconcile the boy Susie was describing with the man who watched my face for signs of discomfort, who memorized my habits, who softened at my touch. It didn't add up neatly, but nothing about Tate ever had. Wayne's name had lodged itself in my chest like a splinter, and Tate, quiet again, carefully neutral, didn't protest when I said we should talk to her. Talia closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, there was something like grief there, but also recognition. Talia went quiet for a long moment. She set her mug down like it suddenly weighed too much. Something happened, she said carefully, And Tate never told me the details, only enough that I understood it wasn't a misunderstanding or a simple falling out. Susie leaned forward. What kind of something? Talia shook her head. He never told me, not then, not later, but it was bad. She paused, searching her memory. There was no hint of tension before that last sleepover, Tate's 4th birthday. They spent most of the night awake just talking from what I was told, about what I have no idea. Her mouth tight. That night was chaos. Our entire family was there, relatives everywhere. I was playing hostess, running around distracted. I didn't notice anything was wrong until after. She looked down at her hands. And by the next morning, whatever had existed between them was gone. Tate shut down completely, and Wayne never came over again. The room felt heavier after that, like something unspoken had settled between us. Talia sighed. Aunt Julia told me something years later, she said quietly, but it never made any sense. Susie stilled. I felt my chest tighten. She said Wayne's parents pulled him away suddenly, Talia went on. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Julia thought it was odd at the time, but she was told not to ask questions, that it was better for everyone if it was left alone. That's it, Susie asked. Talia nodded. That's all she knew, no details, no accusations, just adults closing ranks and deciding silence was safer. She rubbed her temple. What never made sense was Tate. He was 4, but he changed overnight. He stopped sleeping through the night. He stopped wanting friends over. He stopped reaching for people. Her eyes lifted to me. And whenever Wayne's name came up, Tate would shut down like a door slamming, not angry, not upset, just gone. The room fell quiet again. Tate didn't approach children after Wayne, Talia said with a quiet sigh. After everything that happened, he became extremely introverted. She folded her hands in her lap, her expression growing distant as she remembered those years. It was a shock when he came home after his first day of preschool and told me he had met you, Noah. Her gaze shifted to the blond man sitting beside her. It didn't sound like Tate at all. For a moment, I honestly thought he was not my son when he mentioned your meeting. A faint smile crossed her face. But he wasn't. She looked at Noah warmly. For some reason that Tate wouldn't divulge, he walked up to you on the very first day of preschool. Then, just a few days later, he brought you home. Noah smiled softly, trying to picture 2 4-year-olds becoming companions. I remember that day, Noah admitted. I do too, Talia replied, because it was so unlike him. She shook her head. You have to understand, Noah, Talia said gently. Before that day and since that day, Tate never approached anyone to offer friendship. She smiled sadly. I brought Wayne into Tate's life because he was so lonely. Her eyes drifted toward the window as she remembered. You've never seen such a lonely, pathetic little creature as Tate used to be. He looked like a bird that had been caged for years, sitting quietly on its perch, crying because it didn't know there was a world outside. Noah lowered his eyes, trying to picture the confident man he knew as that frightened little boy. I would never say Tate bonded with Wayne, Talia continued. I wouldn't even say they tolerated each other. She shook her head. It was a communal interaction, 2 strange children playing on the same playground because the adults in their lives happened to put them there. There was no mutual affection between them, they just played together because their mothers dropped them off at the same place. She smiled faintly. I wouldn't even call them friends, at least Tate never once referred to Wayne as his friend. She paused before adding, an acquaintance is the word I would use to describe their relationship. Her expression softened. They interacted, they played games, they occupied the same space. But I never saw affection between them. She looked directly at Noah. I saw 2 children entertaining themselves because they happened to be together, not because they loved each other's company. Talia's gaze warmed. That's why you were different. She smiled. When Tate came home talking about you, there was a light in his eyes I had never seen before. He wasn't telling me about another child who happened to be there. He was telling me about someone he wanted to see again. And after that, she said softly, he never stopped choosing you. Her voice caught slightly. He was terrified of other children. Noah frowned. I tried everything, Talia continued. I arranged playdates, I signed him up for activities, I hoped that eventually he'd make a friend. She smiled sadly. But every time I brought him somewhere with other children, he would hide underneath my skirt, crying and begging me to take him home. Her eyes glistened. He'd say, please, Mommy, I want to go home to Joey. The room fell silent. Talia looked back at Noah. And then you came along. She smiled again, this time with genuine warmth. You were the only child he ever chose for himself. Noah swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. All those years, he had believed their friendship had simply happened. He had never realized how extraordinary it was that Tate, who had been too frightened to approach anyone else, had walked up to him on that very first day of preschool. Whatever happened, it wasn't something anyone had been willing or able to name, and Tate had been carrying the weight of it ever since, alone. Talia was crying now, silent tears slipping down her face as she stared at nothing in particular. Christmas when he was 3 was awful, she said, her voice breaking. Tate locked himself in his room most of the day. I could hear things breaking, his toys, his gifts, anything he could get his hands on. He wouldn't come out, wouldn't speak to anyone. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. The house was full of relatives, all whispering, all asking what was wrong with him. Some of them joked about it, others looked at him like he was broken, like there was something wrong with my child. Her shoulders shook, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to protect him. I just knew that whatever had changed in him by then, it wasn't going away. Talia added quietly, a year later, after we'd already moved to California, during the first Christmas Noah spent at our house, a letter came from Wayne. She rubbed at her eyes as if the memory still burned. It arrived right before Christmas. No return address at first, just his handwriting. He was in Philadelphia living with his father after his parents split. Susie's jaw tightened. Did Tate read it? Talia nodded. I didn't know at the time, I found out later. He read it alone in his room. She swallowed. Whatever was in that letter, it undid him. He didn't cry, he didn't yell, he just went very still. That was always how it happened when something really hurt him. He shut everything down. What did the letter from Wayne say? I asked. I don't know, Talia said honestly. Tate never showed me the letter, he burned it. I found the ashes in the sink that night. When I asked him about it, he looked at me like I'd asked him something in another language and said, it doesn't matter. Her voice cracked. But it didn't matter. After that, the walls went back up higher than ever until you came along. She looked at me then, really looked at me. You were the first person after that letter arrived who made him soften again. That's why Wayne's name, his presence, doesn't just make Tate angry, it takes him somewhere else. Somewhere he locked away a very long time ago. Talia cried as she spoke, the words tumbling out like she'd held them in too long. His Aunt Julia and Uncle Joey were very loving with Tate, very attentive, very patient. She wiped her cheeks, trying to steady herself. Julia understood him in a quiet way. When she was in town, she'd take him to the cinema, just the two of them, and sit through his favorite films over and over. Old classics, strange art films, anything Tate latched onto. She never complained. She did that until he was 16, said it was their tradition. Talia smiled weakly at the memory, then it faded. And Joey, Uncle Joey took him on long drives. They went nowhere in particular, just the road, music low, Tate staring out the window. Joey said it helped him think. They loved visiting landmarks together, bridges, old buildings, places with history. Tate liked knowing some things survived time. The photos from those travels fill many albums I display in the living room. She pressed her lips together, pain flickering across her face. I thought it was wonderful that he had adults who saw him, who made space for him when the rest of the family didn't know what to do with a boy who felt too much and said too little. Talia sniffed, dragging the sleeve of her sweater across her eyes. Tate turned on his favorite relatives when they failed to be perfect, and his BPD symptoms became worse as a teen. When Tate was 16, the worst of it just stopped, she said quietly. I still don't know why. One year he was volatile, distant, breaking things, locking himself away, and the next it was like a switch flipped. He learned how to function, not heal, function. She stared at her hands, but stress still shuts him down. Holidays were the worst, family gatherings, expectations, too many people watching. He'd go cold, silent, empty, like he disappeared behind his own eyes. Susie nodded slowly. Anxiety. Yes, Talia whispered. Severe anxiety. He'd dissociate, retreat into himself. He learned how to survive by splitting parts of himself off, locking things away so he didn't have to feel them. Her voice cracked. It worked in a way. He stopped breaking things, he stopped scaring people, but he also stopped letting anyone in his life. She looked up at me then, eyes red, raw with guilt. Except you, Noah. The room went quiet. You're the only person who ever pulled him back into his body, she continued. The only one who made him present. He doesn't compartmentalize when he's with you, he feels, and that terrifies him. I swallowed my chest tight, so when something overwhelms him, he just erases it. Talia nodded. He doesn't forget, he buries it, acts like it never happened because acknowledging it would mean opening a door he sealed a long time ago. She took a shaky breath. That's why, after a breakdown, he can laugh, joke, and suggest a movie. It's not manipulation, it's survival. Susie reached for my hand. And Wayne, she asked gently. Talia's jaw tightened. Wayne is part of whatever Tate locked away. That's why seeing him didn't just make Tate angry, it cracked something open, and Tate doesn't know how to exist when that door opens. I thought of Tate's tears, the way he'd clung to me like he was drowning, and then, hours later, how he'd smiled as if none of it had ever happened. And for the first time, it didn't feel like I was losing my mind. It felt like I was standing next to someone who had learned how to survive by disappearing, and had no idea how to stay when the pain came rushing back. Talia's voice dropped, like she was afraid the walls might hear. Talia nodded. Tate would go completely still if he heard Wayne's name, not upset, not angry, just gone. She took a shaky breath before continuing. Every year on Tate's birthday, Wayne sent him a letter. Like clockwork, Tate always made sure it was gone before anyone could see it. He was meticulous about that. My chest tightened. But on Tate's 17th birthday, Talia said, her voice breaking, I found one. That alone was strange. Tate never let them stay in the house. He was distracted by you. Tate only lost his place around you. Susie leaned forward. What did it say? Talia closed her eyes for a moment, as she could still see the words burned into the page. It was only one sentence, she whispered. Another year I get to check up on you. Have you forgotten what you did and what you're hiding? The room went dead quiet. Susie exhaled slowly. That's not a friendly message. No, Talia said, tears slipping down her cheeks. It wasn't nostalgia, it wasn't reconciliation, it felt like a reminder, like a threat dressed up as a memory. I felt cold all over. That explains everything, I said quietly. Why Wayne knew exactly how to provoke him, why did Tate react like his life was on the line? Talia nodded. Wayne isn't just part of Tate's past, he's part of whatever Tate locked away to survive. She looked at me, eyes full of regret. And seeing him again didn't just hurt Tate, it cracked something he spent his whole life keeping sealed. I thought of Tate shaking in the car, of the way he'd cried like he was finally bleeding out after holding it in for years, of how, hours later, he'd smiled and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. And suddenly that letter echoed in my head, cruel and quiet. Another year I get to check up on you. Have you forgotten what you did and what you're hiding? I knew with terrifying certainty that Tate had spent his entire life trying to forget, and that some ghosts don't need permission to come back. Susie asked it gently, like she already knew the answer wouldn't be simple. So, no one ever knew what actually happened. Why did Wayne leave? Talia shook her head slowly. No, not really, not officially. Wayne's parents said it was about their marriage ending, that he was moving to live with his father in Philly. That part was true, but it never explained the timing. She pressed her lips together, choosing her words. Up until Tate's 4th birthday, everything looked normal. Playdates, sleepovers, holidays together. Then, overnight, it was as if Wayne vanished from our lives. No goodbye, no explanation to Tate, just gone. And Tate never said anything, I asked. Not a word, Talia said. Not then, not ever. If anyone asked, he'd shut down completely. He was 4 years old, Noah, 4, and he already knew how to disappear inside himself. Susie's expression darkened. Kids don't learn that unless they need to. That's what scares me, Talia whispered. Whatever happened between those boys, it was big enough that Tate learned silence was safer than telling, big enough that he carried it for decades. She looked down at her hands. Wayne's leaving wasn't the problem. Why did he have to go at all is the question. The room fell quiet again. And now, Susie said softly, Wayne shows up years later and knows exactly which buttons to push. Yes, Talia said, which tells me he didn't forget, and he knew Tate never truly could. I thought of Tate's voice in the car. Don't go looking for answers in me, I'll let you down. Maybe he wasn't warning me because he didn't care. Maybe he was warning me because he'd learned, very young, that the truth didn't make things better, It just made the pain harder to survive. I asked quietly, did Wayne's parents ever know or tell you why Wayne never came back? Talia shifted in her seat, her hands twisting together. Wayne's mother mentioned one thing, she said slowly. On the drive home that night, Wayne threw up in the car. She brushed it off, car sickness, too much cake, nerves. She asked Wayne why and he said, Tate was gross and did bad things to himself. And that was it. Susie frowned, and after that? Nothing, Talia said. No explanation, no phone call. Wayne never told anyone anything, he just didn't come back. I shook my head. What could a 4-year-old do to make that happen? Talia looked at me sharply. Nothing, she said firmly, and not Tate. He isn't that type, he never was. Whatever people imagine, it doesn't fit him. She exhaled, tired. After that, Tate acted like Wayne never existed. We didn't talk about him, I didn't say his name, Tate never asked. It was like he erased him completely. Joey would make occasional jokes about Noah being Wayne II, but nobody knew what happened. Susie was quiet, listening. Tate hates his birthday, Talia went on. Always has. As he got older it became worse, anxiety, shutting down, acting out. I always assumed Tate hated his birthday because of the Wayne incident that happened on his 4th birthday, but Tate never confirmed nor denied it. I never asked because it hurt my heart to see Tate after I brought Wayne up in conversation. By the time he was 16, his aunts and uncles stopped coming. They stopped sending gifts. Not because they didn't love him, but because every year felt like they were reopening something that hurt him. Her voice softened, so we let the day pass quietly, no parties, no reminders, just space. I felt my chest tighten. He doesn't hold on to people who hurt him, Talia said. He doesn't rage about them, he doesn't obsess, he deletes them, and then he carries whatever's left alone. I thought of Wayne's grin at the bar. The way he spoke was as if he'd never been forgotten by Tate. And the truth settled cold and heavy in my gut was that Tate had spent his whole life acting like Wayne never existed. Wayne had spent his whole life proving to Tate that he did. Talia's voice softened as she continued. We left New York 2 months later, she said. I told myself it was a fresh start, new schools, new faces, new air, somewhere Tate could make new memories that didn't carry so much weight. She gave a small, sad smile. And it helped a little. He was lighter in California, not happy exactly, but not as closed off. He smiled more, he slept better. There were moments where I thought maybe this is enough. Her eyes lifted to me. And then he met you? She let out a shaky breath. That's when I really saw the change, not just coping, living, laughing, caring about things, caring about people. You didn't replace anything or fix him, she said gently. You gave him something new that felt safe enough to grow around. She reached for my hand, squeezing it. California gave him space, you gave him a connection. And for the first time since the conversation began, there was something like relief in her expression. As his mother, Talia said quietly, that's more than I ever hoped for. You made him the best version of himself, Noah. Thank you for everything you did for Tate.